most people, and in this case, when I say most, I don't mean 50% plus 0.1%. Most people, as in just about everybody. So that would apply to you and me. Most people spend their entire lives in ways they just don't even see anymore, either earning praise or avoiding disapproval. So earning approval, avoiding disapproval. Two sides of the same coin. Avoiding disapproval or criticism or withdrawal or whatever. Why? Because of the tone with which it's delivered. Really. Every child is smart enough to pick up the tone in, "You're such a good boy." I mean, that just makes a kid go, "Ah, I matter." Or even if it's subject neutral, as in subject as in person neutral, like, "Nice job." Ooh, the tone of that is just seductive. Who wouldn't want to hear that tone all day long? No kidding. There are people, truthfully, who pay people so that they just lie still, and instead of getting a massage, they just get compliments. Can you imagine? You're paid to get compliments. How fulfilling could that be? But the tone feels that good. Emotionally speaking, it's an emotional massage. Compared to, "You didn't pick up your socks." And in parentheses, again. We'd do almost anything to avoid that tone. I'm talking about a principle that is so very confusing to people, to parents, and to children. Children as related to their parents, to their teachers, to whoever. It's a matter of criticism versus feedback and teaching. Those two can actually have the same words. No kidding. You can use exactly the same words, and one's criticism and one's feedback. One's just information. Or praise versus feedback. It's not the words, is my point. It's the tone. So let me illustrate. The tone and the words. The advantage of doing this on a video chat is you can see my facial expression, which I'm not pretending, I'm not acting here, and you can hear the tone of my voice. So I was talking to a man, William, and during our conversation, he took responsibility for an unkind remark that he had made to his partner, which is, well, unusual. And he described what he had done about it afterward to communicate love instead. In other words, he'd done something cool, loving, kind. He made a choice instead of just reacting. I stopped his next sentence, mid-sentence, mid-word, and said, "Hey." Now, that could sound harsh. I mean, when a parent walks in the room and a child's doing something wrong, "Hey," doesn't have a positive connotation. And yeah, I admit I kind of did it intentionally to get his attention, because I knew that for a second his heart would stop, because we've never had the experience of hearing this word positively. "Hey," I said. And I said it firmly. And he froze, which I anticipated. He said, "What?" Just like this. He froze. His eyes were wide. It was obvious that he was waiting to be hit emotionally, because he always had been hit emotionally after hearing that tone. I used intentionally the tone that other people had beat him up with, but I used it to get his attention, to stop him speaking the rest of his sentence, so that he could see that the same word, and sometimes even a similar tone, can mean different things. Depends on the person speaking it. It might have been a little bit mean on my part, but I wanted to teach him something. I said, "Do you know what you just did?" He paused because he was already afraid. When people ask us questions, it's rarely a question. parent comes in the room and says, "What are you doing?" They're not saying, "Gosh, I'm curious. What is it that you're doing right now?" That's not what they're saying. They're saying, "All right, go ahead and describe to me this really incredibly evil mistake that you're making right now." That's the tone that is spoken. And of course, we hear the tone. I said, "Do you know what you just did?" Now, in this case, I didn't use a straight, direct tone. I was just asking. He paused and he was afraid because he's never heard that question asked as a question. Yeah, sure, it went up at the end and it had a question mark in his past, but it was an accusation. I said, in a conversation with your partner, you chose to stop being triggered. You got triggered, but then the next thing you did was a choice. You chose to not continue with being triggered and angry. You changed your judgment and you introduced love into your relationship. Wow, that's like heroic. He said, "I thought you were going to criticize me." Well, yeah, that was the point I was making. Of course, you thought you were being criticized, because anytime somebody gives you feedback, it's negative. So it triggers you immediately. And he said, "Yeah." And you could see there was actually a look of recognition in his face. I said, "But now, just now, you had a different experience. I simply gave you feedback about what you did. In this case, it was positive feedback, but it might have been feedback about something you did wrong. I could also have said, well, that approach didn't work very well, did it? Do you hear the tone? That approach didn't work very well. Information. Or, that was kind of stupid. I've said that many times. And if people are listening to my tone and watching my face, they simply agree. They go, "Yeah, it was kind of stupid. I've done that a lot of times and it's never worked, ever." Then it's just feedback, no tone. If we use the same tone, whether we give positive or negative feedback, it is almost certain proof that it's just feedback, not praise to make the other person feel better and so that they will like us. And it's not criticism so they'll feel bad and we'll feel more powerful. It changes other people's lives to hear feedback and to feel it. It changes the judgments of a lifetime. So when we do this with no tone, we provide new events, which create new judgments. New feelings immediately follow. When you judge that you're not being attacked, well, the feelings of fear, poof, vanish. And the response, attacking back, it becomes unreasonable. We just don't do it. This is how we change the rest of our lives. And I do this with people all day long. I talked to a man this morning, and he was describing something he'd done, and he was afraid. And I said, "Well, you got afraid because when I said blank," but I don't remember what I said, "you heard me say this instead." And he went, "I did. I actually heard you say that word, a word I hadn't said." And I said, "You heard it because you heard that word every single time from your mother." "Yeah, I did." I said, "Well, so remember this time. I was simply giving you feedback. I did not use the word your mother used. I am not your mother." And that changes everything. Or it can. Up to us. New subject. We've talked quite a bit in recent weeks about triggers. I don't know why, just sometimes it runs in cycles. A trigger, we're experiencing a trigger anytime we just suddenly experience exaggerated emotion. We're feeling fear at a level of 2. Now, for most of us, if we're feeling fear at a level of 2 and we're used to a 5, that's called joy, but it's really just less fear. And then suddenly our fear goes to a 7, like poof, with one word. That's called an exaggerated response. What do? We pause. We ask ourselves what's going on. Did anything real just happen to make me that afraid? Not really, no. Some guy just cut in front of me and I had to tap on the brakes. Not exactly worth a 7, you know? And yet I reacted with a 7 and screamed and honked my horn, rolled my window down and gestured to him my disapproval. Yeah, that would be an exaggerated response. So what am I doing? And is this what I want to keep doing? What do I want to do instead? So that's one way of dealing with the trigger, and we've talked about that. Let me suggest another way. Sometimes helpful in addition to the pause. Everybody resonates with a different way to deal with triggers, so we'll talk about several. No past. Now, that's just an intellectual concept so far, but if you listen slowly and try it, it becomes much more than a concept. I know a man who was triggered by everything. Well, because his childhood was just horrifying. People speaking out, people speaking to him, not looking at him, anything. And he was triggered by his wife, by work, by everywhere, by the way the clerk helped him at the store. And it was all taught to him by his mother, who was paranoid, pretty close to schizophrenic, but probably not. Paranoid, critical, controlling, defensive, overprotective. His mother taught him the concept that everything in the world will hurt you. She actually spoke those words, which is unusual to say them out loud, but she said everything will hurt you. There's a movie that's, I don't know, not all that worth seeing, but interesting, called The Aviator, and it's a story of Howard Hughes, who was a reclusive, frightened, but brilliant businessman and inventor. And it showed him with his increasing development of obsessive compulsive disorder to the point where he sat alone in a room at the end of his life, naked, peeing into bottles, going absolutely nowhere and letting nobody in the room. Why? We would see flashbacks to when he was a child. And his mother was overprotecting him. His mother bathed him because he couldn't do it himself. He couldn't get all the germs off, no way. And she would say, "You're not safe." Or "It is not safe." I can't remember which. But the world is not a safe place. If you hear that from early childhood into your adolescence, then the world is not safe. Ever. It never will be unless some dramatic change in your judgment happens. That became the rock solid foundation judgment of his life. Everything is hurtful. Well, then he'd be triggered by, let me think, everything. He was triggered by somebody knocking on a door. He was triggered by somebody speaking. He was triggered by somebody not speaking because, well, they were thinking terrible thoughts. He was triggered by being in a relationship. He was triggered by being alone because the world is not safe. And I can't even begin to tell you how common that is. We don't realize it because, well, everybody around us behaves like that too. Try it. Walk up to somebody you don't know in the checkout line of Walmart and just gently slap their face. Don't do this. But if you did, you would see an exaggerated reaction, which is what? We talked about this. A trigger. You will instantly trigger them. You will have no idea what caused the trigger. The past events. Some parent saying the world is not safe. Being actually injured by parents or by others. People walk around just waiting to be triggered because the world is not safe. So back to this guy, who was at least as triggerable as Howard Hughes. No kidding. He had a really hard time overcoming this trigger to everything, especially to anything that reminded him of his mother, which was everything. And I finally said, let's try this. Now, this may sound harsh to some people. Too bad. I said, your mother is dead. He said, what? I said, your mother's dead. Your mother never lived. Your mother never taught you anything. You're starting over. Now, that sounds pretty harsh, but nothing was working for him. Everything reminded him of something his mother had said or done. Not everything, not exaggerating. So, your mother has never lived. She's dead. Now, he'd already quit associating with her, but he carried her around in his head. She disapproved of everything. If there is no past, by definition, there can't be a trigger. A trigger means something in the present reminds you of some body of pain in the past. Past events that were painful, terrible, fearful. If there's no past, you can't have a trigger. Oh, it helped him. I would say something, his wife would say something, and he'd get triggered, and both of us would say, depends on who he was with, no, your mother's dead. Now, even saying the word your mother became a trigger, so we eventually changed it to, no, there's no past. There's only now. This isn't an insult to his mother. No desire to kill her. She was not a bad person. Listen to that again. She was not a bad person. I'm not condemning her. But she was so frightened and so consumed with the judgment that the world was bad and hurtful and painful that she communicated that to him, and he carried it around everywhere he went. And even though she wasn't there, she continued to destroy his life. Unstopped, he would have turned into a version of Howard Hughes, alone and in a room, on government assistance, with no job because everything at work triggered him, with no wife because his wife triggered him by breathing, literally. She would breathe at night and wake him up. Her very existence was a trigger, so we got rid of the past. He needed a way to escape her events and judgments, and her disappearing gave him away. And it worked. He doesn't hate her. I don't anticipate that he will not talk to her again for the rest of his life, but for now, she doesn't exist. She has to not exist, or he'll keep being triggered, and while you're being triggered, you cannot heal. Memorize. While you're being triggered, you can't heal. You have to feel safe in order to heal. And he did. And he is healing. He doesn't react the same to the old things. And when he's ready, when he feels loved enough, when he feels loving enough, he will be able to associate with his mother. He will. She'll say things that used to trigger him, and he'll just go, yeah, well, that's not true. In his head, saying it out loud to her will be likely unproductive. He's healing. No past. Why? Because the past didn't work, and the past was hurtful, and the past caused wounds. And now we're going to heal them, so the past is over. New subject. I talked to a woman who was raised by an angry, controlling mother all of her childhood. There was no intention to talk about two controlling mothers in a row, and it doesn't have to be mother. It could have been a father. In these two cases, it was just a mother, and mothers tend to have more influence on their child's early life than fathers do, because they're out busy doing stuff. That's what men tend to do. So she was raised by an angry, controlling woman, and it took her a while to heal from those wounds. It took lots of loving and teaching. And then she began to see how much she controlled everything around her too, just like her mother had. She was both reacting to what her mother did, and she was acting like her mother did. Now, she was less aggressive about it than her mother was, who would just really kind of go off like a bomb. But it was still controlling. It was more subtle. It was more socially acceptable. She controlled how people thought of her, which people call perfectionism. That's really just controlling what other people think and say. She was controlling toward her husband and child. She controlled conversations so that they went her way, because otherwise she didn't feel worthwhile. People don't do this to be mean. She was doing it in response to pain. And she was shocked when I began to point out every time she used controlling. I didn't do that in the beginning when I knew her because, she would have been overwhelmed by it. So mostly loving in the beginning and then teaching. She wrote, she said, "This is what I heard on our last call. So I want to see if I got this right." This is extremely useful, by the way. I sometimes do this with people. We have a conversation. I can tell that it was just too much for them to hear, as most change is. So I said, so that's enough teaching. You write down what you learned on this call and you send it to me when you're ready. So she said, "Have I got this right?" And I was laughing already, because got this right is controlling. Do I have this right? Because if she's right, then she must be worthwhile. So I said, do you see that? Controlling being right to avoid disapproval, to avoid getting it wrong. Now, it might seem like a harsh judgment on my part, but it's not. Controllers can be very sneaky. They get away with it. And they have to see it, or they'll keep doing it. Somebody has to show them that they're controlling, and nobody does. Why? Because when somebody's controlling a conversation, what we do is we hear attacking, which it is, and criticism, and then instead of just pointing out that somebody's controlling, we react to it. We get triggered by their controlling. And so we just react to it. We're not helping them see it. We're just throwing another bomb into the war. Not helpful. Doesn't create peace. It's a different attitude to ask, on her part, instead of saying, do I have it right? It would be a different attitude to say, would you be willing to help me see if I'm missing something here? Much more humble and teachable. It's less right. She continues, "My childhood was chaotic, unpredictable, and frightening. Fact. So I've developed a habit of trying to control everything." This is her talking. "Mostly me and my behaviors to avoid making mistakes and feeling further pain, but also what others think of me. Also controlling my environment and that of my young son, Jack. All as a form of imitation safety." Yes. In fact, yes, 2 times. She continues, "In being afraid of hurting Jack," her young son, "I was trying to control how I loved him for fear of getting it wrong and being out of control. In making a mistake with a friend this weekend, I felt I got it wrong and I was therefore out of control." She's changed the subject from her son to a friend. "And I got afraid again because I was out of control." She continues, "Holy smokes. This control and safety thing is way bigger than I realized. It's only just sunk in as I'm writing about it." Well, good for you. It's not fun in the beginning to see what we actually do. But the alternative is what, almost everybody does. Deny it. And we don't consciously deny it. We deny it because, it's unpleasant. And our unconscious brain just goes, nah, not in the mood for unpleasant. So we deny we did it. But then you're doomed to repeat it because you don't see it. Over and over, people have said to me when I say, you realize that you're angry at your partner right now. We're having a conversation, all 3 of us. the two partners and me, and I say, you realize you're angry at your partner. I am not. I want to record these sometimes. Well, yeah, you really are. And I sometimes mimic the tone. Yep, you're angry. And if we deny it, we're going to keep doing it and stay miserable. She says, when I make a mistake, I often choose to see that I've hurt someone and therefore not maintained control of my behavior. Stupid choice, because it makes me feel bad about myself that I've hurt somebody. Yeah. But it was the best you could do at the time. I've watched people be injured thousands of times. I'm not sure I've ever seen somebody say, this would be the loving thing to say, but I'm going to be hurtful instead. Nope. We get triggered by some pain in ourselves and boom, we react. It's rarely a choice. We love to talk about free will and how we're all cooler than trees and bricks because we can make choices, but we're not a whole lot better than bricks because we just react when we get afraid. She says, I can change my response as soon as I fully accept that getting things wrong and being messy is all right. I'm doing my best and that's enough. I don't have to be perfect. Yes, that is a change in judgment. And after that, feelings and behavior just change. Event, judgment, feeling, reaction. She says, as soon as I accept that I will make mistakes and not do things perfectly, and that it will be messy, the sooner I stop trying to control things and just enjoy life. I'm going to say that again because the sentence was constructed a little messy. As soon as I accept that I'll make mistakes and be a mess, then I will sooner stop trying to control things and just enjoy life. Life is messy, but it doesn't have to be painful, just messy, because we're learning. While we're learning, things are relatively disordered. She says, I'm okay. In fact, I'm beautiful, even when I'm messy. Just like when you sit around with your family, piecing together a puzzle, that's something apparently she does with her family, and we do it in our family at Christmas time. In the beginning, you pour all the puzzle pieces out of the box. It looks pretty messy. It does not look like the picture on the front of the box, does it? The picture is ordered and beautiful. That's why they pick pictures like that. And the puzzles all laying out don't look ordered and beautiful. It is of necessity messy. And yeah, everything's okay when it's messy. We'll get around to it. She concludes by saying, this is life-changing stuff. And you've moved to a different level of realization, understanding, and learning. Way to go. New subject. I was in the grocery store today looking for, this is somebody who's writing to me, who says, I was in the grocery store today looking for nail brushes. Now, back to me. I had to ask Donna what that was. So is that a brush for polishing nails, nail brush, that you would pound into wood, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me? Is it a brush for putting on nail polish? No, it turns out a nail brush is something that you use for cleaning your nails. Who knew? Pretty obvious how often I clean my nails. This person continues. I asked the clerk, I'm pretty sure it's a guy actually. I asked the clerk who gave me directions to the place where the nail brushes would be. I followed the directions, but I didn't find the brushes. Then I asked another assistant and he said, there, and just pointed to where he thought they were. I thanked him. He walked off and I discovered that they were not where he said. Shocking. Actually, I'm always amazed that any given clerk does know where everything is in the store. He continues. So by now, admittedly, I was feeling angry because see, ask 2 times, getting nowhere. And you go into a store, and when you go to buy something, it's not a conscious expectation. We expect pretty much the world to unfold as we wish, because we're there as a paying customer. And without knowing it, we didn't come just to buy a nail brush. We came to buy cooperation and service, and possibly even, way to go, we really like you. I know, nuts, but we do. So it's understandable. It's common, the reaction. It's easily justified. And it's all such a waste. Anger will never, ever help you find the brush. If you become angrier and angry, in fact, they could drop a brush right in front of your feet and you'd stomp on it in your anger because you're blind by then. Anger doesn't help you find anything worth finding. You simply didn't see the choice of just continuing to pursue the item. Quit whining. Just solve the problem. That's an aphorism. So you could have just pursued the item, perhaps with more help, but without frustration. There's no need for it. And although understandable, it's just dumb. So you failed twice. What do you do now? Try a third time. I get misdirected like this, me personally, at a hardware store really often. Where is this? It's over there, or it's over there. So I've eventually learned just to know where things are in the hardware store. You might even say, talking to the person who couldn't find the nail brush, you might even say, would you please come with me and show me the nail brushes? That's what I do when I'm in a store. It's on aisle 13. I'll actually try that once. And after that, I go, would you show me where they are? And they go, and I'll be darned. They're not there, or they're out of them. That's way faster than hunting the whole store over. You just forgot that you had choices. So poof, you went straight to anger, which is what you've learned. You continue. I guess I was feeling like I'd been fooled. We do when we feel worthless, not respected, dismissed by the 2 clerks, feeling a little stupid. And all of that may have been true. That you're a little stupid, that you weren't respected, that you've been fooled, that you've been dismissed. All that might be true. And you still had choices. You still had a choice to do something different from frustration and anger. This is very cool to see that we always have a choice. Otherwise, we're just constantly reacting to other people. So other people rule our lives. Maybe those other people made stupid choices, intentional or not, don't care. But you didn't have to make a stupid choice. Well, maybe at the time you did because you didn't know any better, but you don't now. They might have been unloving or maybe just ignorant, but you were not trapped, which is how you felt. In the past, you were trapped by people who didn't care about you. I get that, but not now. Now you have people who do care about you. And no store clerk, no matter what they do, can take that. So you carry your treasure with you. You're loaded down with the treasure of feeling loved, and now all you want is a nail brush. Big deal. You'll find the nail brush, but you won't have lost your treasure. If you don't feel loved, you go into the store with no treasure at all, and finding a nail brush feels like a treasure hunt. It's not. Now you get to keep your peace of mind, find the nail brush, everything's fine. You continue. I went back to the first lady I asked, and I asked again. It was at this point that her colleague standing next to her said to me, this is the person writing me, you look like you're about ready to explode. That's actually a perfect description of your face on occasions when you decide to be frustrated or victimized. I've seen that expression on your face. So give the lady a star for accuracy, if not for kindness. You felt stuck and foolish. So then that comment added another frustration. Now you're going, is it that obvious that I'm an idiot or that I'm frustrated or about to explode? Yes. You are that obvious when you feel trapped or victimized. We kind of all are. We think we're hiding this, not really so much. I was really angry at my partner, but I didn't show it, people say. I wanted to just kill that child who'd spilled toys all over the room, but I didn't show it. Yeah, you did. It's good to know. It explains why some people react badly to you when you feel trapped. The more trapped and frustrated you felt, the less people felt like helping you. You saw that with the second person who just went, they were already seeing it. And they went, over there. But honey, I ain't going with you because I don't want to be killed on the way. You get frustrated enough, nobody wants to help you. And then you feel more trapped. And the third time you ask for help, you're going to get even less. You continue. When she said that about me, that you look like you're about to explode, it hurt. So let's try a new choice. The old one's not working. You've talked to 3 people now. It's just getting worse. Let's try something different. Not I'm hurt, just it's information. Now, you can't do this unless you remember that there are people who care about you. So what's the information? What if you just decide, all right, this is just information. 1, most people do not care about you. Okay, I don't care. 2nd, you don't care that most people don't care about you because you have people who do care about you. If you have 3 people who profoundly care about you, you have 3 more people than most people have. You have 3 people who unconditionally love you. I happen to know that you do. Well, then who cares that the store clerk at Walmart isn't the 4th person? And you're expecting them to be? No, be happy with the 3. 3rd, now there's no hurt. It's just information. 4, there's no frustration. Now that you're not hurt, you just persist and you find the dang nail brushes. You continue. Maybe I should just laugh at this whole mini drama. That would be a lovely idea. But you can't do that until you learn the lessons we just talked about. 1, 2, 3, 4. People don't care about you, but so what? You have people that do. So there's no hurt. It's just information, so there's no frustration. Boom. Now you have a choice. Now you can laugh. Then you can laugh at old choices, but not until you see and feel a new one. New subject. Last night I was in the bathroom and my wife, Greta, called my name, which I didn't hear because of the loud vent in the bathroom. She called out again, and I heard just enough to know that she'd spoken. That's all. I couldn't hear any words. Couldn't make out any words. So I cracked the door open to see what she wanted because I couldn't communicate through the closed door and with the vent on, which automatically comes on when you turn the light on. She was annoyed with me because she had had to call out to me twice, thinking that I heard her the first time. And she was annoyed that there was a delay because I had to reach to open the door. Now, I've heard this one many times in various forms. Person A calls to person B in the next room, often through a door, often with lots of noise. It's stupid to do that. Greta knew she couldn't see you. She knew that. She was not looking into your eyes as she spoke, but she thought you could read her mind or had an obligation to have super hearing to pick up on her every word. In fact, in her head, she was saying to herself, if he cared about me, he'd hear me. Well, it turns out that caring about somebody doesn't amplify the volume of a sound. So her assumption or her desire or her expectation would be really wrong and really unproductive. So does that justify you being frustrated? Waste of time, frustration. We've talked about that already. What's the solution? Let's find a solution instead of being frustrated. Imagine that. It's easy. If Greta wants to speak to you, and this applies to everybody who's listening, and we've all done this, she's the one that wants to speak to you. So she has the responsibility to come and find you. We started that rule in this house way back when the kids were little. They would go, Dad, and then they would say some sentence. And I would go, I'm in here, because I'm not going to go in the other room and find out what they want to say, unless, of course, they're screaming because they're, hanging by a limb from a nail. But you can tell the difference between that kind of pain and just, Dad, I want to tell you something. I would say, I'm in here. So they learned to come in there where they could talk to me. She has the need. It's her job to fill it, or at least to express it, not call out to you and demand that you come and find her. It's her job to fill her need. You did nothing wrong here. In your next meeting that you have with her, the next time you check in with her to plan a day or whatever, you can tell her, unassociated with that event, you just say, in the future, if you'd like to talk to me, I need you to come and find me. Because if I can't hear you, it comes across as my not caring. And I don't want to communicate that to you. So you come find me. And if you simply shout out for me, I won't respond. Except maybe to say, I'm in here. Because it works. There's no argument about, so you're not listening to me. No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do the whole triggering thing we've talked about. Pausing, and what can we do? How can we solve this? Discuss all of this at a time when there's no shouting from the next room. That's not the time to bring it up, because now you're going to be seen as criticizing her. Nope. When everything's calm, if you want to speak to me, you come in and look at me. Make sure I'm looking at you. Every once in a while, Donna will come into the room where I am and I'm typing, and she'll say something to me and I'll actually respond. Must be my subconscious going, I have to respond, so do. And then she leaves the room and later says, did you do the whatever that she asked? I don't remember you asking me. Well, but I did ask you. Was I typing when you asked me? Yes, then I didn't hear you. But you responded. I know. My bad. Come in the room and just stand there or wave your hand. And I'll stop typing. I'll stop what I'm doing. Look at you, because it doesn't count till you see the whites of my eyes. And I'll be listening. And boy, does that ever work. It just does. Plan it proactively. You would be wise to do this both ways, so you both have the same requirement, and to teach your kids about a loving way to interact with each other. It teaches people to pay attention to each other. It's not just about effective technical communication. That's not it. It's, if you speak to me, I want to care about you. And I can't do that if I can't hear you. And if you want to feel cared about, you can't do that from the next room. Communication has to be clear, and it requires a mutual understanding. Most of the time, the loving thing to do when your partner speaks is to stop doing what you're doing and listen and respond. When I speak, it really feels loving to me. When I speak to Donna, even when I'm interrupting what she's doing, it's really conspicuous that she stops what she's reading or doing. She stops it. She puts it down, looks at me, and listens to what I'm saying. She does that better than I do. If what she's doing is important, she says, hang on a sec, and I'll be with you. Meaning she has to finish a sentence she's thinking or writing, or finish an email. And I go, cool. I go back to what I'm doing sometimes and wait till she's available. Or she says, I'll come and get you in 5 minutes, because she's doing something that she really just wants to finish. That's all it's necessary. She wants to. And if I speak to her, it will interrupt what she's doing. Okay. Nobody gets stopped from getting what they want. I do get to speak to her. I just don't get to speak to her for 3 minutes. Well, so what? I'd rather have her full attention in 3 minutes than be distracting her right now. Wouldn't you? It is the responsibility of both parties to be clear. If Donna speaks to me, it's both her responsibility to make sure I heard her and my responsibility to respond if I did. Even if it's to say, hang on, or I didn't hear you, please repeat. Bilateral responsibilities in a partnership. Imagine that. A partnership where two people would be mutually responsible for themselves and to do their best to love their partner. It really works. How would she make sure that I heard her? Because sometimes she's been sure that I did, but then discovered that I didn't. How do you ensure that your partner is hearing you? Just say this, sweetie, would you look at me? Wow. How complicated is this? Instead of, let's see, being offended, assuming your partner heard, then being offended because they didn't hear, then insisting that they did hear, then getting mad about that. And now you've triggered your partner and your partner attacks you. Everybody knows where this goes because we've all done it. Would you mind looking at me? So if she says that to me and I don't hear her, it's pretty obvious because I'm not looking at her. Just do that. It eliminates so much conflict and frustration. It's a funner way to live, like, no kidding. Pain and fear, new subject, cause all the unproductive, unhappy judgments, feelings, and behaviors in our lives. So as we get rid of the pain and fear in our lives, all of that stuff, garbage, just falls away. And what we're left with is us, who we really are. Really, not kidding, not exaggerating the simplicity of this. Everybody is running around looking for themselves, finding themselves. So they do what? They go to Nepal and meditate in the mountains in a monastery. Well, you couldn't do that. Mostly a waste of energy. Get loved, trust it, lose the pain and fear, and poof, there you are. Can't count how many times I've been talking to somebody, provided an environment where they don't feel afraid, they lose their fear, the next sentence they speak comes from them. And I stop them and go, do you know what you just did? No, you just spoke as you. You just spoke with no fear. You didn't protect yourself. You didn't defend yourself. You weren't manipulating. You were you. And many people say, oh my gosh, I think that's the first time ever. Yeah, that's common. Then you spend the rest of your life without fear expressing who you are instead of finding who you are and improving who you are. It's fun to watch. And it's so little work. It's not more work. Might be work in the beginning as you ditch the fear and adjust yourself. But illustration. I know a woman I met like 3 years ago, so empty, afraid, and pain all the time, all her life. One of her responses to pain and sense of worthlessness was to entertain people. So she sang all the time. No kidding. You'd speak a word, she'd sing. About everything. You could say any word, she could sing a song about it or that contained that word. Maybe not anti-disestablishmentarianism or pneumo-ultramicroscopic silico-volcanoconiosis. So maybe not those words, but any ordinary word, she could sing a song. She found real love, studied it, stuck with it, got more, trusted it, lived it, runs a real love group. She's calm and peaceful. And what does she do now? She still sings. She still entertains from time to time. But now it's not a compulsion. Now she does it for fun. Imagine that. It's changed her whole life. She still has a desire to sing and entertain, but it's so much less. It's fun. instead of clinging. One of her gifts, in fact, is to sing. But now it's just expressed as a gift. It's not used to protect herself. And that's the whole idea, is that we all have divine, innate, eternal gifts. It's who we are. Altogether, they're who we are. If we're afraid, they become weapons. We use them to hurt other people. We use them to attack ourselves. If somebody is unusually tender, for example, what a beautiful gift. But if they're in pain, they just feel their pain deeper. We eliminate the fear, and the tenderness comes out as a gift not only to ourselves, but to everybody else. And the same is true with all of our gifts. Solution: new events. New events with loving people. These new events create a new judgment. The world is not painful. The world is not fearful. I don't have to protect myself all the time. And when that judgment changes, we lose even more fear. And now we can just be ourselves. That's our response, which instead of being just a reaction, is now a choice. And then we win. And so does everybody around us. We'll see you in a week.